we can't leave a discussion like this without, given that we're in 2025, without talking about the influence of social media and electronics,
right.
Not just on education and what's going on in education, but just the young emotional adult's life, right? So you obviously have to talk about it quite a bit, and parents are hypersensitive to it now. So there's there's this discussion now all the way through Congress about how this should happen, and now every school district is starting to promulgate a policy that says, look, this is where we should be. Your thoughts on where at least with respect to the development of children and with respect to education, where should we be?
Yeah. Well, like Army and Navy's policy of no cell phones, during the day, absolute. Every school should not allow any cell phones. Just remember that the screen is one of the big poisons for child brain development right now. It's people got to see it as a poison, and they got to see it as poison to the brain. The brain in front of these screens for so long, it can't, like very young people handing their little kids their smartphones like they're 2-year-olds. Okay, so that's poison. So that is absolutely going to damage the brain of that toddler or that infant. Because what this little brain has to do, it can't handle that. It can't handle the fast-moving images, all the colors going in and out. It can't even handle the way the light is happening. So the brain creates bypasses, and these bypasses are based on the brain getting this dopamine rush, right? It's very much a dopamine thing, and dopamine is a reward chemical, people may know. So the basal ganglia and the nucleus accumbens and the ventral striatum, these are all parts of the brain that handle the dopamine system. They have to kick in for this thing that's moving so fast. So things get rerouted. So normal brain development can't happen. And there are blank spots in the brain by the time this kid is older. So already the course has been set. And in Saving Our Sons, I divided up birth to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. I just divide it up and give all the best research on how much these kids should be in front of screens. For birth to 2, of course, nothing except FaceTime with grandparents. And then onward, all the way through, like no video games, until 10, 11, and no video games on school nights. If you're going to succumb to video games, then at least none on school nights, when kids are younger. And don't give kids smartphones until like 15, 14, some people 13, 14 as a rite of passage, maybe if they've matured. But I mean, I know our Surgeon General is saying 15, 16, that'd be fine. All because these screens, as the child's brain is developing, these screens are poison for it. And we just got to consider it that way. There is no way around it. Depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, anorexia, bulimia. I mean, so many of the brain disorders that we're seeing so much more of in our kids in the last 20 years, there are two primary causes for them. One is we're messing with kids' genes because of environmental neurotoxins. They're not digital. Those are more fertilizer, pesticides, that stuff. That's a different topic. But the second is digital, because that's an environmental neurotoxin, right? It's toxic for the cells of the brain. So we can't control what people put in pesticides and fertilizer, I always say, unless we go completely organic. We can control the digital poison. And so like no screens for an hour before bed, no screens in the bedrooms, this is also good for adults. No screens at the dinner table, want to have real relationship, all of that. So if anyone's heard something, they're listening to this and they're like, oh, I heard someone said my kids shouldn't be in front of screens so much, I would beg them to take them that seriously. Just consider this a poison. Yep.
So any thoughts on, look, there's a lot of pressure that's put on both parents and children at very young ages. Little Johnny doesn't have a cell phone. He's 9 years old. And they have to, there's a lot of, it's everywhere. Right. I mean, even with kids who are, the 8-year-old who has a 15-year-old older sibling is doing everything they can to rush for it. Are there certain techniques that they can, or discussions that they can have to say, look, we're there's going to be an orderly way in which you gather this over your young adulthood.
Yeah, it's parental authority and then education of the child. The parent has to hold the authority. There isn't really a way around that. And while holding the authority being you're not going to have a smartphone until, let's say, 14. It's a privilege. I want to see you mature into it, right? So here are some maturation standards I want you to meet, and then you're going to get a smartphone at 14 or 15, like your brother did, let's say your sister did. That's parental authority, and then educate the child. Here's what you got to do. You got to do your chores. You got to, because then we're leveraging it for child development, for child maturation. That's some of the leveraging. So, and then in educating the child, of course, that parental authority that's not how we do it in our family. So, okay, so your friend over here got one, but that's not how we do it in our family. And I mean, I'm a dad and a grandpa. Like, I had to do that.
Right.
I don't have an easy answer for parents who say, well, I don't want to do that. So I don't have an easy answer for that. Parental authority is really, really important to raise children. I mean, we are not their friend. We are their parent. And we have to protect and provide for them. It's primal. That's our duty. And so this protects them, and we're weaving it into healthy development. We're leveraging it so they have to mature to get the privilege. And so there's nothing easier than that, parental authority.
We hear that a lot here. We hear oftentimes from a parent whose student is doing quite well. It's been here, let's say, 2 years, and is doing well. Everything's fine. And the parent will say, well, he'd like to come back home and go to our, local public school or wherever that might be. And you look at the facts and you say, well, everything's going very well. And the parent says, well, getting a lot of pressure from our son, right? And we often say there are some decisions that are too important for a child to make.
Oh, absolutely.
And when things are going well, the social pressure of saying I'd like to be closer to my friends more often, not just the weekends or whatever that might be, it is the kind of discussion that parents have to have with their children to say, look, we're in a position to know what's best for you, and we're going to do it. And it's not easy. We recognize it's not easy, but that your point's well taken.
Right.
That they have to move out in that direction.
Right.
The social media piece, not just the use of the technology itself, but the incredible influences of social media. Where are the lines drawn for that?
Yeah, well, if they don't get the smartphone, then, hopefully they won't have as much. I mean, that's one of the reasons not to give them the smartphone, so they're not on social media. Social media is inherently dangerous to child development. It's inherently dangerous to the developing brain for a number of reasons. One is it's artificial, not real. So what I mean by that is you're not in proximal relationship. Proximal being like you and I are in proximal relationship. Our pheromones and neurochemistry, right, is changing every second as we're together here, a few feet apart in relationship. That's how relationship builds the cells and pathways of the brain, right? Social media, you're not in proximal relationship, but it's artificial. The brain is fooled into thinking it's in relationship, right? So it's not, but it's taking on what social media is telling it. In the same way that if a parent or a friend proximally said, oh, you ought to do this, right? But a parent or a friend didn't say that, who's in proximal relationship. It's just an image and a moving image, that's artificial. And now AI telling the kid to do something or believe something. So the lack of proximal relationship in itself, the artificiality of it is dangerous because it fools the brain. And then the speed with which that's occurring is hard on the brain. So when TikTok was banned, obviously I and just about every other child development specialist in the world was like, great, because the 60 seconds, the 40 to 60 seconds is dangerous for the brain, constantly like that. Then it got unbanned. So I'm hoping it will get banned again, because that other thing is speed with social media. How it's moving so fast is too hard for this brain to handle, but it's addictive for the brain. So what the brain does is it goes, yeah, I think I'll spend 3 hours on YouTube, TikTok, and I'm 12 years old. Okay, so that's 3 hours of this sort of addictive behavior that's connected to dopamine. And that's 3 hours I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing homework. I'm not in proximal relationship with others. And then I have my phone. So while that's going on, I'll text. Well, that's not proximal relationship. It's convenient, but it's not proximal. So then the third big thing I'd say is the isolation. So the brain thinks it is not isolated because it is relating to all these people on social media, but it is isolated. And because it's isolated, you get significant brain effects, right? Depression, anxiety, et cetera. And that's another primary reason they are linked neurologically to all these mental health problems, or why social media is linked to them, because lack of proximal relationship, incredible speed that's addictive, and then social isolation. And you can see the illusions here, right? The brain thinks it's not isolated. The brain thinks it's learning a lot, right? And the brain thinks it's getting good signaling about what it should look like, what my body should look like, because these people said I should look like this, right? It thinks it's getting all this wisdom, and what it's getting is self-destruction. So once, if a parent is seeing this and sees that the kid is spending all those hours on social media, I always beg the parents to do things. One, look at oneself. So we as adults can get on social media, and then we kind of know something's going on. Yeah. We kind of know I don't like that about okay, well, for the kid, it's amplified 10 times, And then, number two, just take the device away. And kids who go cold turkey, whose parents make them go cold turkey, this is constantly replicated research. The first 2 or 3 weeks, they're incredibly angry. I hate you, slam the door, I'm going to run away, all that. But by about a month, by about 30 days, huge plurality of those kids go to the parents and say thank you. Then by about 2 months, most of them have said thank you, because the depression, the anxiety, and a lot of these things lift, and their general well-being improves, and they get it. They're like 12 years old and they're like, oh yeah, I feel a lot better now. So hang with it for 30 days at least.
Amazing. We say this a lot on our campus, with respect to social media, or screens, if you will, is that, the beautiful thing about a boarding environment is that it's 3-dimensional environment. We live in a 3-dimensional environment here. And we talk a lot about saying, look, you don't need that screen time or that social media, because your friends are a few feet away from you, right?
Right.
Which I think is a difficult message to get across. But as you say, if you work at it for enough weeks, it becomes something that the boys will very, very quickly understand and say. And we've had it with our changes in our social media policies, or in our cell phone policies, and have them say exactly what you just said. Anecdotally, we can say we've had our boys come up to us and say, after 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks of a new policy, my grades are better.
Right.
I appreciate the fact that you did this. It's not that draconian. Everything's just fine. Right. But initially, it's a very painful process.
Right.
But it does get to a point where they I think we oftentimes don't give our boys enough credit about how skillful they are at understanding themselves. Right?
Beautiful.
But if you just coax them or coach them into the right places, they do find they're quick to get there. Right. I think to some extent they haven't been tainted by a lot of the issues that we run into as we get through our associations with media and various things of that nature, which make it difficult for us to nurture our boys a little bit better. I want you to talk a little bit about your books, because you have an incredible array of them that are meant to serve some different purposes.
All right.
Oftentimes they interact and cross each other, but I'd love for you to be able to tell our listeners what they what they can look to in your books. If they're looking for some specific thing, some of your books, for instance, can be wonderfully technical if you're interested in some technical things.
Right.
And some of them are very strategy and technique oriented. And the newest one, for example, Boys Rescue Plan, talks a lot about, where we stand now currently. And it talks a lot about, you mentioned earlier, the big three and the influences that they have. But I think it'd be really nice for people to be able to say, well, Michael, there's so much, right? Where should I go?
Okay, yeah. That's asking the author to talk about his books. Man, thank you so much. I will love to. Yeah. No, you're right. Okay, so we have to remember, I've been writing, I started this in 1989, and I've been writing almost a book a year, in some category. So there are a lot of books. I apologize, but I also have a lot of gray hair, so I've been around a while. Okay, so and I like to joke that I have a writing disorder, which you've heard me talk about, but it's really true. My gray matter area for words is really developed, and I am addicted to writing. I write 2 to 4 hours every morning. So I would produce a lot of books, but yes, they have a purpose. And, like The Wonder of Boys. Okay, that is popular. Let's say I get a lot of mail about that book, especially for birth to 10 parents of birth to 10. It's got other things, but I know that the earlier years, like parents, moms, I think moms are the most likely reader of that book, to help them understand their sons. And then Fine Young Man is adolescent, sort of. Okay, now let's focus on 10 to 20. Let's just focus on 10 to 20. The Good Son is moral development and character development. That whole book. Birth to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, the stages of moral development. Here's how you help your boy, grow up with character. I even wrote a book with Terry Truman, young adult Prince Honor. We wrote a book called What Stories Does My Son Need? So 100 movies and books to teach character, right? So you're right. They all serve a purpose. And then Boys and Girls Learn Differently, and all of the derivatives from that are all about parents and teachers, how to educate. So just look for Boys and Girls Learn Differently. And then there's strategies for teaching boys. They all will show up under that. Boys and Girls Learn Differently. And then The Wonder of Girls on Raising Girls, The Minds of Girls. 20 years later, the newest research, like screen time and all that for female brain, so Minds of Girls, Saving Our Sons. And then Minds of Boys, which was earlier, 2007. That one is specifically on boys in school, but it's now almost 20 years old. So Boys, A Rescue Plan would be the bookend for that. And The Purpose of Boys, that is a whole book on how to do rites of passage to take boys to manhood so that they live with a purpose. And that is huge. We have millions of boys right now who don't have purpose. So The Purpose of Boys, that, and I'm probably forgetting some. Of course, I've written a number of novels, books of poetry. I feel like I'm forgetting one of the classics. Oh, Leadership in the Sexes. That was corporate. That was the application of the Gurian, neuroscience theory to corporate, because I had done a lot of corporate training.
Yeah.
And that's written with Barbara Annis, who also a corporate trainer, on leadership and how men and women lead differently. So I don't know if I've forgotten some in there, but that's a lot of them. And then Boys, A Rescue Plan, most recent one with Sean Kuhlman, packed with stuff for parents to fight the battle for their boys.
Is there a message that you like to leave both educators and parents with about how they should proceed? How should they fight that good fight?
Yes. Thank you. I think start by being science-based, start by understanding who this boy is, nature, nurture, culture, who this boy is, who is your son from the inside out. And for me, that's always going to mean the boy brain, because to me, if someone could identify the soul, I would say the soul, it's light, so it must exist in the brain too. The heart is there, social emotional, right? And the body is controlled by the brain. So if you're studying the boy brain, you're studying the boy. You're learning his nature. who he is, you're going to see that it's somewhat different than his sister, that there's a lot of overlap. Of course, everyone's human, but okay. And then, so start with that, start with nature, start with the science of who this boy is. It's all available in these books and elsewhere. And then, move to nurture. Okay. So I'm understanding. So exactly how should I nurture the nature? That's the one I forgot. I wrote a book called Nurture the Nature, which, how could I forget that? That was a classic. Nurture the nature. Which is, this is the nature of my child. And all of us are in agreement, like mom, dad, two moms, two dads, however that works out, grandma, grandpa. We're all studying the nature of this child. So how do we nurture that now? Now we got it. We get it. Like, this is a rough and tumble boy. Okay, that's part of his nature. So how are we going to nurture that? Are we going to correct him every second? No, we're not going to. We're going to give him more space, right? And he's going to want to knock things together. Are we going to correct that? No, actually, we're going to give him more space and nerf stuff, Or when he gets angry, he just gets so angry and he can't talk about it for a while. Okay, are we going to say, use your words then? No, no, we realize this is his nature. So what he needs to do is run around the block or punch a punching bag or, do this for and then a couple hours later, depending on his age, we could ask him what was going on emotionally. So we learn his nature and then we learn the skills to nurture that nature. Okay, so he loves us more, by the way. He feels more respected by us. So there's more love going back and forth. And then we're actually able to love him better, because we understand his nature and we're not fighting it. And we're directing it toward the good. So always character, always directing toward the good. So we nurture the nature. So I think really understand the nature of the kid, focus on that, and then figure out what nurtures that. And for boys, especially by the time they hit 9, 10, 11, 12, that's going to intersect also with middle school, high school, like for A&A. Look for environments. Now we're into second and third family. Look for environments that nurture the nature of the boy. So that's look for environments that understand the science. If I'm a parent, that understand the science of boyhood and that are set up to nurture the nature of this boy. And do that, the boy's going to turn out well. Why? Because every child develops in a 3-family system. So nuclear family, however it's set up, is the core family. Then you have the extended family, blood kin or not blood kin, but 5 people that are like mentors. And then you have the institutional family, the tribal, communal, school, church, that kind of bigger family. That's how the kid's being raised. So if all 3 of those communities understand the nature of this boy, you can't go wrong. He's going to turn out well.
That's spectacular. And with respect, that same issue now with respect to educators, build a perfect education institution for me, right?
Okay.
So that boys are being respected in the way that you just mentioned.
Okay, so it's going to be kind of be environmental and training, right? So the environmentally, we want it to be set up for the male brain. Like for instance, like we do contracts with Head Start. So we're working with them in the very early. And one of the first things that we do is say, okay, the more boys you have, the more environmentally large the room has to be. There has to be more space because the male brain is a much more spatial brain than the female. So males are constantly trying to use more space to learn, whereas females tend to contract space because we talked about the frontal lobe and the white matter activity. But the gray matter activity and the spatials, males are trying to expand space. And think hunting, which is what males did up until very, very recently. So hunting, more space. So some of it's environmental. Look at that. Yeah. And there are hundreds of those things. And then the other is going to be training. So it's always going to be personnel relating to the boys, right, in the environment. So train them. So train all the personnel in male brain and female brain in all the good developmental frameworks, of which male and female brain is crucial. Get them all trained. The reason that works is because everyone helping this boy has their own very powerful intuition. To some extent, parents don't need experts. Teachers don't need experts because they're so intuitive. Okay. And where we experts can help is that we can provide them with training, and skill sets to meet the needs of differentiated learning, of different people in their environment. Because their intuition might be really good for this person, But I, as a parent, my intuition may not be as good for this person. I get training, I'm going to be able to relate to all of them. And so male and female brain training means, oh, okay, I'm going to be able to relate now to all the females and all the males. My intuition can kick in, and it can kick in part, it can kick in well because I'm prepared. Like, okay, I get it. There's this vast spectrum of male, and there are certain qualities that I'm seeing that, okay, now I know how to elicit the best out of those guys. So I really want the intuition of the parent or the teacher to work. But we need some training ahead of time, especially for the more challenging kids. So environment and training. I think we can see that if the parents and the teachers don't get the training, then what happens is 1/3 of the kids will test out great in a school. 1/3 are going to do fine anywhere. They could learn on the street corner. That third's going to do great. Then there's going to be a middle third that's going to be kind of struggling and not working to potential. They should be getting A's, they're getting B's. They should be getting B's, they're getting C's. Then there's going to be 1/3 that's failing. But once everyone is trained, right? Teachers' intuition kicks in. Once everyone is trained, these populations change. So now you have a few who are problem kids, however one wants to say that, or they're not learning, or they're acting out. Okay, you're always going to have them. But now the rest of that population, they're learning to potential. So that's why the grades go up, and the test scores go up. So we should never expect perfection. We should always know some kids are going to challenge us. But the other 30 or 25, or in a school like A&A that is smaller classrooms, they're all going to be able to reach potential. And that's why the training is important. Hard to have a good environment without the training.
Brilliant.